Some betrayals don't arrive with a bang. They slip in quiet through a half-open door, wrapped in your own bloodline's voice. I was walking to the kitchen, just another evening in my son's house. The hallway was dim, the light from his office spilling across the floor. Then I heard him. "He's not mentally fit," Mark said, calm, measured, like he was reciting a recipe. "We just need to adjust the deed while he's distracted." My hand froze on the wall. The lawyer said something back, too soft to hear. Mark chuckled. "He doesn't even know what day it is." That was the moment. The air didn't just go still, it turned, like a hand around my throat. I walked past without stopping, without making a sound. In the kitchen, I poured tea with shaking hands. My body was moving, but my mind was screaming, "They think I'm gone, useless, in the way." Elaine would have seen this coming. That night, in the privacy of my room, I sat at my desk and opened the top drawer. Dust clung to the corners, but the folder was still there, the one Elaine labeled "in case." Inside, I found everything: our will, the original deed, and the updated version I filed after her funeral. I ran my fingers over the seal, notarized, dated, months ago. In that version, the house wasn't theirs. It wasn't even mine, technically. I'd placed it in an irrevocable trust, one they never asked about, one I never offered to explain. I remembered Elaine's words, scrawled in the margin of a letter she once left me. "Don't let your silence be the reason they win. Protect what matters, even if it means protecting it from your own." I sat there for hours. The tank at my side hissed softly, the only sound in the room. I wasn't confused, I wasn't weak. I was grieving, that's all. I forgot birthdays because I missed her voice singing over the cake. I repeated myself because no one really listened the first time. But I wasn't gone, not yet. If anyone's listening, don't make the mistake I did. Don't confuse love with loyalty. I stared at the signed deed. They thought I didn't know what day it was. But I did. It was the day everything changed for them, not for me. And this time, I wouldn't go quiet. The tea was already steeped when he walked in. Chamomile, my favorite. He never remembered that before. Mark set the cup down gently on the table next to me. "Morning, Dad. Thought you could use something warm." I looked up, kept my expression blank. "You remembered the chamomile." He smiled like a man trying to charm a judge. "We've all been a little tense lately. I just want what's best for you." "Of course," I said. He pulled a chair closer, sat with his elbows too neatly on his knees. "I've been thinking maybe it'd be helpful to talk to someone, a specialist, just to clear some things up." I took a slow sip, let the bitterness sit on my tongue, clear things up. Memory, cognition, just routine stuff. No pressure. They'll even come here, make it easy on you. I let out a soft laugh. Maybe I have been a little foggy. His eyes lit up too quickly. "Exactly, just a quick visit. It's for your protection, really." "Of course," I said again, nodding, "for my protection." He left the room 5 minutes later, convinced I was already half sedated by fear and tea. But inside I was writing, word by word, step by step. As soon as the door clicked shut, I reached for the drawer beneath my desk and pulled out the battered address book. Helen's name was still there under H in Elaine's handwriting. I ran my thumb across it once, then dialed. She answered on the second ring. "This is Helen." "It's Richard." A pause. "Richard Marshall. It's been a while. I haven't heard from you since the funeral." Her voice softened. "How are you holding up?" I looked at the untouched tea. "They think I'm losing it. Mark wants me declared unfit. I heard him tell a lawyer yesterday." Silence stretched on the line, then a sigh. "It's happening more and more. Quiet coercion, property grabs through fabricated incompetence. I need to make sure what Elaine and I built doesn't get stolen out from under me." "Do you still have the amended deed?" "Signed, notarized, filed." Her voice changed, firmer now. Then bring it, come in tomorrow, we'll handle this carefully. I don't want him to know. He won't, we'll use the back entrance. I looked over at the photo of Elaine on the bookshelf, the one of her reading on the porch, sun in her hair. She would have told me not to wait, not this time. Thank you, I said. No, Richard, she replied. Thank you for waking up before it was too late. I hung up and sat in the quiet, letting the tank hum beside me. Mark thought he'd caught me in a fog, but all he'd done was turn on the light. Helen's office hadn't changed. Same mahogany shelves, same faint scent of legal paper and old dust. The only thing different was the silence, the kind of silence that meant truth was about to be written. She looked up from the desk and motioned for me to sit. You look well, Richard. Not according to my son. Her mouth curved slightly, not a smile, something sharper. Let's see the paperwork. I reached into my coat pocket and handed her the envelope. She opened it slowly, sliding the pages out one by one. Her eyes scanned the notarized stamps, the filing seal, the signature. You filed this when? 3 months after Elaine passed. She nodded. Irrevocable trust, clean, precise. You named the Historical Preservation Board as secondary beneficiary. She always said the house shouldn't be gutted after we're gone. She was right. I sat back, the oxygen tank letting out a soft hiss beside me. Mark and his wife aren't in this version, she said. They don't deserve to be. Helen placed the papers neatly on her desk and tapped the edge. This is solid. They can lie, but the paper won't. Now the medical side. I raised an eyebrow. He's going to try to discredit you. Probably already has a doctor lined up, biased, friendly to their narrative. We'll get ahead of that. You know someone. She opened her planner and slid a card across the table. Dr. Patel, court-certified, no bias. I've used her before in conservatorship cases. She's sharp, fair. I took the card. You need your own record, she continued. Yours, not theirs. Something that shows you're capable, lucid, and aware. Something no one can shred in court. I nodded slowly. You really think he'll push it that far? Helen leaned forward, her voice low. If he's already talking to lawyers behind your back and planting brochures in your room, he's already passed the line. The only question now is how far he thinks he can run before you catch up. I looked down at the deed. Elaine's name wasn't on it anymore, but her presence was everywhere. She taught me how to fight quietly, how to listen when others shouted, and how to act when no one was looking. He thinks I'm 2 steps behind, I said. Helen smiled now. Then let him believe that. Let him dig the hole while we stack the evidence. The light outside had shifted by the time I stood to leave. Long shadows stretched across her office floor, cutting the room in clean halves. I tucked the card into my wallet and buttoned my coat. Let's make sure the truth doesn't just speak, I said, glancing once more at the papers on her desk. Let's make sure it can't be erased. Helen nodded. Ink they can't smudge. That's the only kind that counts. The waiting room smelled of lemon polish and something sterile. Not a soul there knew my name, and that's how I wanted it. When Dr. Patel opened the door and called me in, she didn't look at me like a man whose mind was fatting. She looked at me like someone worth listening to. We spent 2 hours together. She asked questions that didn't insult me. What did you eat for breakfast? 2 eggs, toast, no butter. The coffee was terrible. She chuckled. Fair enough. Who's the current mayor? Still Johnson, unfortunately. We moved on from names and dates to deeper things. What do you do to keep your mind sharp? I read crime novels mostly. I run a small discussion group at the library for veterans, Wednesdays, and I walk slowly, but I do. She nodded and jotted something down. What day is it today? Wednesday. You almost made me late for my veterans group. That made her laugh again. It was easy after that, easier than I expected. She didn't talk down to me. She didn't pity me. She just listened. At the end, she leaned back, pen capped. "You're not perfect," she said, "but you're far from unfit." I watched her sign the form, one stroke then another. "I'll send this to your attorney. You're in safe hands." I thanked her, not just for the assessment but for seeing me. By the time I got home, Mark had already visited. I noticed the corner of the blanket folded differently, the scent of his aftershave lingering by the doorway. I turned on the lamp beside my bed and found 3 glossy pamphlets arranged in a neat fan. Sunset Ridge Assisted Living. Serenity Oaks, Comfort with Dignity. Maple Grove, Memory Support Suites. Each one felt like a slap without the sound. He hadn't said a word, no call, no visit, just pamphlets like it was already decided. I sat on the edge of the bed, heart pounding like a slow drum. So this was it, his next move. He thought it would scare me, that I'd see the brochures, panic, maybe even cry. But instead, I folded each one carefully, slow, deliberate, and walked to the kitchen trash. I opened the lid, slid them in beneath the coffee grounds and yesterday's mail, and pressed them down with the back of my hand. They landed right under his arrogance. The deed was filed, the assessment was signed, and the trap he thought he was building around me, it was already closing around him. I turned off the light, and for the first time in weeks, I slept without grinding my teeth. The car ride was quiet. Mark tapped the steering wheel like a man trying to time his lies between red lights. "You okay back there, Dad?" he asked, glancing at me through the mirror like I was a toddler in a car seat. "Just fine," I said, folding my hands in my lap. I'd worn my oldest coat, the one with the frayed collar, to let him think I still needed him. When we pulled up to the lawyer's office, he parked with a little flourish, like this meeting was a show he'd rehearsed. "We'll just go over some updates," he said. "Make sure everything's in order, nothing binding." I nodded, of course. The receptionist barely looked up. Mark led me to a conference room already waiting with coffee, water, and a smug man in a pinstripe suit. "Dad," Mark said, "this is Jeremy. He handles estate transitions." Jeremy reached across the table, firm handshake, warm eyes. "Mr. Thompson, we're here to help, no pressure at all." I smiled and nodded. My silence made them talk more. "We've prepared a few options," Jeremy began. "Just protective things. A partial conservatorship, some interim paperwork to make sure you're cared for should anything happen." I watched Mark nod along like he was being generous, like this was mercy. "There's a contingency clause, too," Jeremy added, flipping a page. "If you become unable to manage the property." "I see," I said softly. Jeremy leaned in, voice gentler now. "Do you feel safe at home, Mr. Thompson? Is your son treating you well?" That was the moment. I could have stayed quiet, could have let them bury me under their paperwork, their polished words. Instead, I looked him square in the eye. "I signed something weeks ago," I said. Mark froze. Jeremy blinked. "I'm sorry." "I said I signed something weeks ago, a deed. It's already notarized, filed." Mark leaned forward. "Dad, what are you talking about?" "I just hope," I said slowly, "your notary is as thorough as mine." Jeremy's mouth opened, then closed. Mark's face flushed a color I hadn't seen since he broke my shed window with a baseball at age 10. I stood up, pushed my chair in gently. "Thank you for the tea," I said. Wait," Mark sputtered, following me into the hall. "What did you sign?" I didn't answer, not until we were back in the car, engine humming, tension loud. "What did you sign?" he said again, harsher this time. I turned my head and looked out the window, watching sunlight skim the tops of bare trees. "The truth," I said, and that was all. His fingers gripped the steering wheel tighter, but the road ahead, that was already mine. "Of course. Here's Chapter 6, The file drop told in first-person POV with emotionally raw dialogue, inner monologue, and a cinematic closing beat. Word count, 532 words. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the peaceful kind, the tight, bracing stillness before a storm breaks. I was sitting in my chair by the window, pretending to read the newspaper, but really just watching the shadows shift across the living room carpet. Then the door slammed. Heavy footsteps, no knock. Mark stood there, red-faced, gripping a crumpled stack of paper like it had personally betrayed him. "You filed the trust," he barked. I looked up slowly. "Good morning to you too." "Don't play cute with me," he snapped, waving the papers. "You submitted everything, the deed, the report, that damn recording. You went behind my back." I folded the corner of my newspaper. "No, son, I went around your trap. There's a difference." His jaw twitched. "This is public record now, Dad. Do you even understand what you've done?" "I believe I do," I said calmly. "People are going to think I manipulated you, that I'm some kind of vulture." I looked at him then, really looked at him, the way his hairline had receded, the way his eyes shifted too fast, the way he talked more about perception than principle. "You tried to have me declared incompetent," I said, "for property, for convenience, and now you're worried about embarrassment." He paced the room, clutching the pages like they were burning his hands. "This could ruin my reputation." I gestured toward the kitchen. "Coffee's fresh if you want some." His hands clenched. "I gave you everything after Mom died. I handled the funeral, the finances. I took care of you." I stood up. "You managed paperwork. You didn't take care of me, you managed me. There's a difference." He went quiet just for a second. Then, voice low, "This isn't over." I walked past him toward the door and opened it wide. "For me, it is." He didn't move at first. Then, without another word, he stormed out. The screen door snapped shut behind him. I stood there, one hand on the doorknob, the other still trembling. It wasn't just the confrontation. It was the knowing, the certainty that I'd finally stepped out of the web he'd spun around me for years. I walked back inside, sat down slowly, reached for my coffee. It was still warm. For the first time in weeks, I took a full breath, not the shallow, guarded kind, a real one, the kind that fills your lungs and reminds you you're still here. I looked at the copy of Helen's email on the table, the confirmation that the documents were submitted, time-stamped, locked in the county records. My signature, my mind, my name cleared and protected. Outside, the wind shifted the oak branches, just enough to cast light through the curtains. I didn't smile, but I didn't flinch either. I didn't sleep the night before the hearing, not because I doubted the truth, but because I knew how easy it is for people like Mark to twist it. Helen picked me up early. She brought coffee and silence, both things I needed. At the courthouse, I saw him packing the hallway outside the courtroom, lips tight, checking his phone like the outcome was already in his calendar. He didn't look at me when I walked in, just muttered something to his attorney. The judge entered, female, calm, composed, sharp-eyed. She introduced the matter, then turned to Mark's lawyer. "Your client contests the validity of the deed transfer," she said. "On what basis?" "He believes," the man began, "that his father was not of sound mind when he signed the documents, that he was coerced, manipulated, perhaps even exploited." The word exploited landed like a slap. I watched Mark nod, trying to appear concerned, like a dutiful son who just wanted what was best. Helen stood next. "Your Honor, my client requested a psychological evaluation voluntarily. The doctor is present. We also submitted a recorded conversation in which Mr. Mark Turner references exploiting his father's mental state to adjust the deed while he's distracted. The notarized deed predates any alleged concern, and it was filed, witnessed, and certified under no duress." The judge looked at me. "Mr. Turner, do you understand what's happening today?" Yes, I said. My son is trying to erase me while I'm still alive. A murmur in the courtroom. Even Mark's lawyer blinked. Dr. Patel stepped forward. I performed a full cognitive and psychological evaluation. Mr. Turner is lucid, independent in decision-making, and fully competent. The judge nodded. Evaluation accepted into record. Mark stood up, suddenly animated. You don't understand. He forgets things. He repeats himself. He didn't even recognize his own grandson at Thanksgiving. I stared at him. He had a cold and wore a mask. I asked if it was Nathan. That's not dementia, that's being human. The judge held up the deed. This document is legally binding. It was signed while the individual was of sound mind, confirmed by a certified psychologist. The allegations of coercion are unsupported by any credible evidence. This hearing is dismissed. The gavel struck. I stood. Mark remained frozen, shoulders tight, eyes darting like he might still find a crack to slip through. I walked past him slowly, close enough for him to hear me, but not so close I had to look at him. You should have trusted me, I said. Instead, you tried to erase me. He didn't respond. Outside the courtroom, the sun was too bright. Helen handed me my sunglasses and asked if I wanted to grab lunch. I didn't answer right away. I just stood on those courthouse steps and let the light hit my face, solid, warm, undeniable. And I breathed fully, without shame, without permission. I always imagined I'd make the paper for a garden competition or a war memorial donation, not for outwitting my own son. But there it was, sitting on my front step like it belonged. The local paper, front page, headline bold and unapologetic. Veteran outsmarts elder fraud attempt with early legal planning. They used the photo Helen provided, the one of the house backlit by morning sun, just after I'd signed it over to the Historical Preservation Trust. No flashy angles, just brick, windows, and a deed they couldn't touch. The caption underneath read, "Deed signed before any games could begin." I read the article slowly, then again, not for the facts but for the tone. It wasn't sensational. It wasn't dramatic. It was respectful, honest. It told the story like I lived it, step by step, blow by blow, without pity or polish. They quoted Helen. Too many seniors wait until it's too late. Mr. Turner didn't. I folded the paper neatly and carried it to the bench near the garden Elaine planted, the one with the overgrown rosemary bush she never let me trim. The morning air was soft, the kind of morning that didn't demand anything of you. That's when my neighbor Jim walked by with his mutt, Daisy. He stopped and pointed to the paper on my lap. That your house in the photo? I nodded. They get the story right. Close enough, I said. Jim chuckled. Damn shame you had to go through all that, but still, that's your legacy right there, not just the home, the fight. I didn't say anything, just looked down at the ink on the page and thought about all the times I second-guessed myself, about the nights I wondered if maybe I really was slipping, if maybe Mark was right, that I didn't know what day it was, that I couldn't be trusted. But the date on the deed said otherwise. The signature was mine. The judgment had been final, and now the truth had ink on it, black, permanent, public. Jim gave Daisy a tug and kept walking. I stayed there a while longer, letting the sun warm my shoulders and the quiet fill the space Mark had tried to colonize. Later that afternoon, someone slid a note under my door. No return name, just a folded piece of paper with 2 words scribbled in black ink. Thank you. I didn't need to know who sent it. Maybe someone else fighting their own silent battle. Maybe someone who just needed to see that it was possible to win without shouting. I placed the note next to the newspaper, 2 scraps of paper, one printed, one handwritten, both carrying the same message. You were not erased, you were seen. Here is the full script for. The text came on a Tuesday. No greeting. No how are you, no apology. Just cold confidence wrapped in entitlement. Just give me the key, Dad. We both know you're not staying long. I stared at the screen for a long time, the gall of it, not a question, a command. A subtle warning dressed like concern. I walked to the kitchen. My slippers dragged slightly across the old tiles. Elaine used to nag me about replacing them, both the shoes and the floor. I never did. I opened the drawer where we kept the spare. A small brass key, tied with a faded red ribbon. Mark had used it 100 times growing up, after school, after curfew, after disappointments he never apologized for. I picked it up. The metal was warm already from the afternoon sun hitting the drawer. I set it on the table. Just looked at it. That key had once meant access, family, welcome, but now it felt like surrender. I thought about the voice memos, the pamphlets, the forged signatures they almost got away with. I thought about the night I overheard him planning to take the house like it was a foregone conclusion. And I thought about the quiet battle I had waged since, deed by deed, form by form, word by word. Then I picked the key back up, walked back to the drawer, and slid it shut. "No key to give," I typed back. "It was never yours." I put my phone face down and waited for the buzz, for the rage, for the guilt trip. But the screen stayed dark. I stood by the window for a while, watching a squirrel dig up something it had forgotten, probably buried it for later and moved on like so many of us do with kindness or cruelty. That night I checked every lock. Not out of fear, not anymore, but because I finally could. I turned the deadbolt and exhaled. For the first time in years, this house, this tired, creaky, memory-heavy house, felt like mine again. Not just legally, not just on paper, but spiritually. As if every corner, every faded photo frame had waited for me to reclaim it. I made tea, sat in Elaine's old chair, watched the hallway light flicker softly across the floorboards. Somewhere inside something settled, not victory, not exactly, just peace. And in a drawer beneath a jumble of rubber bands and pens, the key waited, quiet, where it belonged. Unused, unoffered, unclaimed. The sun had just cleared the rooftops when I stepped onto the porch. The air smelled faintly of cut grass and exhaust, the city pressing gently against the quiet of my little yard. The plaque gleamed on the front gate. "This property is protected in perpetuity under the Elaine and Richard Marshall Trust." I sank into the wicker chair, my smaller oxygen tank clicking softly beside me. Cold tea in hand, I watched the children across the street chase each other, squealing with laughter that carried across the sidewalk and into the empty spaces left by my family. My grandson hasn't come by in months. Mark hasn't spoken a word since the courthouse ruled. Not a single attempt at reconciliation. And I didn't care. I sipped my tea, letting it cool on my tongue. I didn't fight to win. Not really. I fought to remain. To be present in a world that tried to write me out, to be seen. To remind them and myself that I existed fully, deliberately. The house was more than bricks and beams. It was history, memory, and life. Protected now, not for my ego, not for spite, but because it mattered, because Elaine believed it did, and because I finally did too. Across the street, a girl stopped mid-chase to pick up a stray book someone had dropped. She opened it and squinted at the words, pointing to a picture of a tree. For a moment, I imagined Elaine there, hair pinned back, reading softly to a group of eager faces. I thought about Mark and the attempts, the whispers, the forms he wanted me to sign, the pamphlets he left on my bedside table. I thought about every step of the slow burn strategy Helen and I executed, every recorded word, every signed page, every quiet victory that had led me here. I felt no grief, no rage, just the soft rhythm of my breath in and out, steady and warm. I didn't need to hear apologies. I didn't need to see regret. Those things belonged to him, not to me. I closed my eyes and let the sunlight touch my face, illuminating the lines in my skin. The ones that had tracked every loss, every betrayal, every moment of fear and courage. A dog barked in the distance, a car door slammed, life went on untamed and simple. And in that quiet I realized what I had won wasn't tangible. It wasn't a house, a deed, or even the public record. It was acknowledgement, existence, integrity. They said I wasn't fit to choose. They said I couldn't understand. But the deed I signed said otherwise. And every memory, every decision, every breath I still take says it again. I rested back in the chair, letting the hum of the city blend with the hum of my tank. I didn't feel alone. I didn't feel erased. I felt alive. And that was more than enough.